Hey everybody, Dan here with Pain Free You. Today's topic is going to be the 3 ways we experience pain and symptoms. And I'll bring this home in a minute as to why it matters to understand this stuff. Okay? So I'm going to take a couple of breaths. Breathe in the peace. Exhale the chaos. Breathe in the calm. Exhale the noise. Breathe in something good. Exhale something bad that you want to release, get rid of. So, 3 ways we experience pain or other sensations, symptoms, whatever you want to call it. All right. So, absolutely, we experience them emotionally. Because when we have a sensation or a symptom that we're not too keen of, there will be an emotional response, right? We also notice these symptoms physically, sensorially, right? I don't know if that's the right word, but sensations, sensorially. We can feel it physically. That's the physical aspect of experiencing symptoms. Doesn't matter if it's pain or not. Other symptoms can be felt in our senses. So there's the emotional. There's the sensorially. I think that's right. Somebody comment. You get the point. And the third aspect of experiencing symptoms is cognitively, through our thinking. Mental. That's our mental state. And so I did a video a while ago, not that long ago, about the 3 ways we experience the world. Emotionally, physically, and mentally. And I laid out some very good strategies to use all 3 of these ways that we interpret the world to teach our brain that we're actually okay and actually safe. So I'm going to just drill it down a little bit here with regard to how do we experience pain or other sensations. And for the most part, you will sense them with your sense of, feeling physical things, right? But that's not really a dial that we can grab and turn much. There may be some process with somatic tracking or meditation that you might be able to do something, but I don't think that directly affects or turns off symptoms. I think those may perhaps influence, because somatic tracking and meditation, things like that, they really work on the other 2 things, your emotional response and your mental response. How do you think about it? Your cognitive thinking about the symptoms. So, I believe the areas where we can have the most influence over whether or not our subconscious brain feels safe or not is in the emotional state in response to symptoms, and in the cognitive state, meaning the mental state, how we're thinking about things. And yesterday I did a video that said, think differently to feel differently. And it's absolutely true, and I had a lot of confirming comments on YouTube and Facebook that people were like, absolutely, that totally works. My thinking is so much better this year than it was last year, and as a result, I'm feeling so much better this year than last year. So if you want to influence the physical sensations, focus on your emotional response and your mental response. Focus on the emotion and the thinking. How are you thinking about the symptoms? Because those 2 areas really hold a lot of ability for you to influence things. Because if you can think better, what's going to happen with the emotions? They're not going to fly up with the emotions of fear and terror and catastrophic thinking and worry and health anxiety and projecting a future that says, I'm just going to keep on getting worse and worse until I can't take care of my kids. And I just had that conversation with somebody today. Excuse me. So it's really important to kind of focus on not the symptoms or the sensations that you're experiencing, but on how you're thinking about them and how you are feeling emotionally about them. Now, you might be like, of course, Dan, I'm thinking about them all the time. I'm watching them. I'm in despair. I think I'll never get better. Think. Fear, fear, fear. Emotion, emotion, emotion. Oh no. Despair, sadness, anger, frustration, fear, anxiety. Those are all the emotions, but a lot of them are created by the mental state, the thinking about the sensations that you are experiencing. So we really can't directly control sensations. I'm not aware of it. But the best way to influence them is with proper, accurate thinking about what actually is going on, which is why I keep on driving this home, folks. The foundational knowledge that your brain is creating these symptoms as a way to protect you from a perceived danger, not a real one. And I know I can't even express the number of stories I've heard for why people say, well, I'm broken because my doctor told me this. Okay. Set that on the table, off to the side, and then rule in TMS. Do the assessments. Yourpaintest.com. If it's over 30, it's TMS, which means your doctor is incorrect about his diagnosis and his call for what's causing the symptoms. Right? There's a FIT assessment. Dr. Schubner created it. Functional, intermittent, and triggered. These are certain characteristics of TMS, or perceived danger pain or symptoms. So go to painfreeyou.com/start, or click on the Get Help menu and go to the Get Started menu. Do the assessments. Look, without the foundational knowledge that you're actually okay and that this is just a brain operating on a bunch of fear and misinformation from doctors and the internet and friends and family and even your own thinking. So when we correct the data with accurate information as to what's actually going on, we've now taken care of the cognitive aspect, because cognitively, unless we decide to allow fear and the symptoms to run the show, cognitively we can always kind of pull ourselves back and say, time out. I know I'm really feeling very colorful right now, but I know cognitively what's going on. The more colorful the symptoms, the more the perception of danger exists in your brain. And it's our job, it's our responsibility to teach the brain through repetition, calm reassurance, confidence, ideally indifference, where you can go, hey, brain, I know what's going on. I'm not concerned. You shouldn't be concerned either. So you can absolutely utilize the two parts of pain or symptoms that you have influence over and control over. You can control your emotional reaction to the symptoms, especially if you're armed with the accurate knowledge as to how this system called the human body works. You can absolutely control your thought responses to the symptoms, especially if you're armed with the accurate knowledge of how this system called the human body works, how pain works. And by taking control over the two aspects that you have input into, you have the greatest opportunity to influence positively this scared, misinformed subconscious brain, which, by the way, is just trying to keep you safe. It's not trying to mess with you or hurt you or torture you or do anything to you. It's simply keeping us safe. The symptoms are the warning signal to warn you against what it is perceiving as dangerous. It truly is up to us to say, hey, subconscious brain, truly, there's nothing going on here. Right? Look for evidence of that fact. If you've ever had a moment of pain-free time, that's evidence. If you haven't had a moment of pain-free time, it doesn't mean it's not TMS. It doesn't mean it's not the brain creating. It just means that your level of perceived danger has been fairly constant for a while, and therefore the symptoms are up all the time. So please don't use one of the various criteria to rule in TMS and say, I don't have that, so mine must be physical. No, it doesn't work that way. And in the FIT assessment on my Getting Started page, you can have as few as one of those items checked off as yes, and that's enough to confirm that your brain is in charge of creating the symptoms and the sensations and the pains. So, how do we experience pain? Cognitively, thinking. Sensorially, our physical sensations, like if I do this, I can feel my finger running along my face, right? That's a sensation. And for many of us, the sensations are less than pleasant. And then we also have the emotional aspect of how we notice and respond to our sensations or symptoms. So again, your ability to influence the physical sensations is directly tied into your mental state, your thinking, your thoughts, your cognitive thinking, tied to accurate information as to how this stuff works. And it's also based on those thoughts that you're now able to kind of pull back in from the ledge and say, well, we're really not in any terrible danger. I know it's uncomfortable, massively so. And for some of the sensations that I've heard, I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy. So I get it. I know how tough it can be. But the things that are within your influence and your ability to work proactively is your emotional response, and a lot of that is tied to your mental, cognitive response. Lean on the accurate data so that you can move towards, closer and closer towards indifference, at minimum, calm reassurance. And most of all, don't panic. Try not to freak out. And if you do get into a panic, notice it and go, oh, I'm doing it again. Come on, back out. Come on. Here we go. And then you use the cognitive thinking to say, hey, nope, I know what's going on. Been listening to Dan for a while. I've done the assessments. Everything indicates that it's my brain creating it, just based on perceived danger. So I'm not worried about my foot, my ankle, my knee, my chest, my headaches, my hormones, whatever. All right? Bring yourself back from that precipice, if you will, and remind yourself that you're actually okay. And the more consistently you do this, and the more calmly you do it, the faster your conscious brain is going to pick up on that. What happens to your emotional state when you remain calm more often? Your emotional state is also calm and more peaceful and honestly more joyous. So, those are the three ways we experience pain or other symptoms or sensations. Cognitively, you can choose your response. Accurate data. Emotionally, you can choose not to get tied up into the emotional state. Why? Because you have the ability to choose not to ruminate on all the fearful, catastrophic thinking that you may have been doing for a really long time. And the thinkings absolutely drive the emotional feelings. It absolutely does. Just think about the thing in your life that's pissed you off the most and spend 20 minutes thinking about it and the conversations and everything else. Then notice, what's your emotional state? It's not going to be pretty, right? Because by thinking about the story, you're recreating the emotion. So my recommendation is, if the thinking is going faster and faster about the symptoms, the sensations, about maybe you don't feel like you can get rid of this, or you're too scared, too anxious, too whatever, that's when you go, shh, I don't have to think about that now. Then pull yourself back in and remind yourself that, well, I'm a human like everybody else, and I can get better just like everybody else. How do I know how long it'll take? When you have successfully neutralized the emotion of fear, aka perceived danger, that happens at the conscious and subconscious level. And when you have kind of learned through practice to not focus and think about the symptoms all day long. Two things keep symptoms persistent: fear, aka danger, and attention. So even if you're not terribly afraid of it, if you're constantly staring at it, wondering why it's not going away and being pissed off every time it's notable or noticeable, you're giving it way too much attention, and it may be the attention alone that's keeping it hanging around, even though you may have already successfully dialed down the fear. So I guess my question is, if you've dialed down the fear with the accurate knowledge that your body's actually okay, why are you paying it any attention? Notice it'd be like, so what? Don't care. And then move on with your day. And I've had a couple of instances over the past several years where I've had some low back pain, sciatica, even had a neck thing going on with radiating pain down my arm. I noticed it, but I gave it very little fear, almost none. It's just kind of, well, what's that? But okay, whatever. I didn't look it up. I didn't research it. I know I didn't fall out of a tree and bust up my arm. and I gave it as little attention as possible. When I notice it, I'd be like, oh, what else is going on in my life? Let me focus there, right? And the process works. Inevitably, in the few times that I've had some symptoms return over the past 13 years, none of them became chronic. And that's what your future can look like. Because if you have a symptom return or a new one come up, and you absolutely respond calmly, emotionally, physically, and mentally, guess what? It's not going to stick around. And I hear stories of that all the time. So, those are the 3 ways we experience pain or other symptoms: cognitively, emotionally, and sensorially. So, love you guys and gals. Hope your new year is kicking off in a positive direction. I'm thrilled to have you here in the community watching these daily videos. If you want to join the group, feel free to. I'll probably be announcing in the next week or so a couple of new group times. So there will, instead of 2, be probably 4 sessions where the group sizes will usually end up smaller and give you more options in case the Wednesday at 1 or 7 p.m. Eastern doesn't work for you. So keep your eye out for the announcements. I'll announce it on YouTube and Facebook when I've got those time slots figured out. And I appreciate you. Love you. And we'll see you tomorrow. I promise you that. Take care.